Welcome everyone. I've got an updated version of the build with a full process of how to craft. I'll be going over every item that I've got. So I'll be able to show you the full process with the omens, the orbs, and the base items we start with. It's all very cheap as well. Personally, I've spent no more than a couple of divine on any item. The most expensive is divine for double T1 bases, but you don't have to get that. That's just what I chose. For the build, we have had a few changes to the tree, nothing exciting, just stacking more Arcane Surge effect for the cast speed, and then getting more cast speed as well around the tree. We have tried to focus on Energy Shield, so that was at 13,000, and then the Magic Find as well at 120. So yeah, let's jump straight into the crafting. So with the wands, we're going to start with either a cast speed suffix or a crit chance suffix. We don't really mind whether we have a good prefix or not. In the focus demonstration, I will show us trying to keep it, but it's still a 50-50. But either way, if we have a crit chance, we want cast speed essence, it's like this one. And then if we have cast speed on the wand, we want a crit chance essence. So that's going to make sure that we have both cast speed and crit chance. There is another way we can make a wand, but when we homogenize in the suffixes, it's random what we get, so we can get crit damage, and that can replace either one. We don't want that. So the random prefix we have, we're just going to get rid of, and then that's going to be replaced by a +3 to level. So there is a reason for the warp build. We might prefer a +3 over a 4 or 5, and I'll speak about that more there. But for now, we're just going to slam it again to generate another prefix. So we did get a good one there, and not so good one there. So if it's not good, we're just going to want to turn it into a mark of the Abyssal Lord. We do that with the Sinistral and Abyss Essence. So that's going to remove the prefix we don't want. There is something where when we try to apply the essence, the game tries to apply it to something it's not allowed to. So we're trying to force a prefix, or the game is attempting to remove a suffix, but it's being told it's not allowed to. So if we keep trying, so we'll see. Yeah, so then it does eventually go on, and we can see the messages in the text box. So don't worry if it doesn't work the first time. That's probably a good sign that you're doing it the right way, and then just keep trying and you'll get that eventually. So we also want to desecrate it, and that's going to be to get the elemental damage. We can use Abyssal Echoes, but I found if we don't get the elemental damage, we can still get the spell damage that cost life, or however they word it. That's the one, spell damage with spells that cost life. Obviously, prefer the elemental. It doesn't really make a difference. It's just looks a bit cleaner with the elemental. It's a bit more palatable if you want to try and pass it on. So we got lucky with that one. And then we'll try again. And there it is again. So we're going to take these two ones now, and we're going to slam with homogenizing omens. So here they are. We still need to add a couple of prefixes onto this one, so we're going to use a double, with Greater Exalt Omen. And we are still using Greater Exalts, I'll say, throughout this. We can use Perfect Exalts if you want, but I'm just going to use a greater one here. We've got double gain. So the focus is quite nice for us to do. We're going to start with either a cast speed or a crit chance suffix. And I'm going to just do two slightly different versions. One where we obviously keep the prefix, and one where we get rid of it. So for Lightning Warp with Atalui and Imbitter, we definitely want cold damage. Don't really want the fire damage, so for this demonstration we'll be getting rid of that. It's got crit chance, so we'll add a cast speed essence. And then the focus that has the cast speed will add the crit chance essence. And that's going to make sure that we have both cast speed and crit chance on the focus. If we start off with a tier 1, then obviously we're going to guarantee a tier 1 and a tier 2. You don't have to have tier 1 like this, you can have tier 2, tier 3, whatever you can get your hands on. But as we can see, it is going to guarantee a tier 2 from the essence. So then we're just going to slam it, and then it's going to be a 50-50 to keep the good prefix we want. So in this case, we want to get rid of the energy shield with a Sinistral and a perfect sorcery. Luckily we did hit it, so that's pretty nice. We'll have to hit this up with a homogenizing next. You can use perfect exalts, but it's not really necessary. This is going to guarantee a spell damage as well. And then we've only got prefix open, so we're going to desecrate that. And ideally, you probably want energy shield, but the flat energy shield is going to be a bit better. But for us, for lightning warp, the extra AoE, maybe some other builds as well, if you need the AoE, that is a really nice desecration to get. So we're going to be taking that one. And then I'll also just show us what happens when we don't care about the prefix. So this is going to be a lot better if you are just buying a really cheap one. Maybe the bases get a bit too expensive, so we'll get rid of the fire damage. So we add the cast speed with the essence, and then we're going to use the perfect sorcery to remove the prefix with the Sinistral. And then we've just got 3 suffixes. So we're just going to slam it. If we get something good, then obviously we've not. So we're going to use the Essence of the Abyss to put a mark of the Abyssal Lord on there. And that's going to hopefully give us a higher roll when we reveal it. So we'll desecrate that. And now we are guaranteed to get a spell damage if we use a homogenizing exalt. So we're going to guarantee a spell damage roll on there. Didn't hit it too high, but at least it's something. Don't forget your Abyssal Echoes as well. It's going to be nice to have on this one. So for the warp build, we do want to hit the cold damage. Obviously not chaos. We didn't get it, but that's a high lightning roll. We do a bit of lightning damage. Or if not, then maybe you can pass it on to a friend or sell it on the market. When we're doing the rings, we just want to get a prefix and a suffix that both have rarity, and then we're just combining them together. So you do want to use the same ring so that you can guarantee which stat you get. So for us, we're using pearl rings. You can also close the recombinator window to make it faster, as we see. They still appear in the window, they don't disappear. But we're basically just throwing together as many rarity rings as we can. You can use a greater essence of opulence on a magic ring, and that is going to give it a suffix. So you're still going to have to find a ring with a prefix rarity, but that is probably a cheaper way depending on how the prices change. So what we're going to do now is, once we have our prefix and suffix as a rarity on the base type we want, so I've got some cast speed, and the cast speed is going to work really well with what we're about to do now. So the Ullerman modifier is quite interesting. We can do this 2 different ways with a prefix or a suffix. So the spell damage for the prefix will work with a caster tag, but we are going to desecrate the suffix for skill speed, and that's going to give us the speed tag. So like I say, there is multiple ways to do this. This is just the way that I chose, so that I had overall more cast speed for the build. So when we actually reveal it, it's not guaranteed we get it, so we definitely want to use the Abyssal Echoes. So we're quite lucky to get it there. And again, we've got it twice in a row. But like I say, it's not guaranteed to get it every time. So we're quite lucky there. And yeah, I think maybe for the video, the game's having a bit of a kind spot for us. But yeah, that's definitely on the lucky side. Do not expect to replicate that, I would suggest. And then we have to actually use a greater exalt. We can't use a perfect exalt for this, but it'll just say we can't apply it, so you won't lose it if you try. And we don't need a suffix omen. I just overlooked that. But we homogenize in this. So with the skill speed, we get the speed tag, so that guarantees the cast speed. So after catalyzing all of the rings with life, we're going to use greater exalts. And what we're looking for is to just slam life with the exalt catalyzing omen. If you don't get life, we're going to reapply the life catalyst to the rings we did not get life on. We're going to have another chance to get it. If you did get life on it, then I'd suggest to put the cold catalyst on there, so we have a bit of a higher chance to get cold damage percent. And I think that's going to be the next best prefix for us to have. So we'll quality them up, and then we're just going to slam them. I am using greater exalts again, like I'll say throughout. You can use perfect exalts if you want to. It does have a big difference, honestly. Like, in the best case, it's probably doubling the chance. So if you would have had a 10% chance based on the weighting, you'll have a 20% chance, because the lowest tier modifier takes up half the weight pool. So if you remove half the weight pool, then you double the chance for the modifier you actually want. So I do recommend just to use the greater exalt. It's for the sake of price, but if the price is not a barrier for you, then perfect exalts are probably the way to go. And then at the end, I do use caster catalysts here, but what we actually want to use is the speed catalyst. So you'll notice, obviously, on the ring it says caster, but we definitely want the speed, because that's going to increase skill speed as well. So if we want to try and work out whether it's worth using an omen of recombination, we basically just decide, is it cheaper to buy an omen, or is it cheaper to buy 2 more amulets? So that's going to depend on the time. And for me, it was cheaper to buy an omen. I think I was paying for 100 or 120 exalts at least for the spell skill, trying to snipe them. The spirit was 1 exalted, so that's non-factor. We'll see, just like the rings, we can recombinate that. And then once we have what we want, we are going to double homogenize in, because the spell skills is giving us the cast tag, and that's going to let us get both spell damage and cast speed. So they're great for our build, and love both of them. We're using greater exalts. We don't have to use a perfect one. And then, because the spell damage gives us the damage tag, we're actually able to get critical damage as well. So we only need to use homogenizing. We don't need to specify a suffix here. It can only add critical damage, because that's guaranteed every time. And we're going to use another desecration. That's for the Invocated spell. I don't think we actually have to use the Omen of Abyssal Echoes here. I do think the desecration is guaranteed for us. We're always going to get Invocated spell. We've got quite a low roll there, so we'll refresh it, and we should get the exact same options. So yeah, I think we always get it, but I would still say to use it just in case. Maybe I'm very lucky and I don't have enough of a sample size to tell. So with the gloves, and it's just like any other armor piece, we can use percent energy shield or flat energy shield. And with the gloves in particular, we can start with rarity or chaos resistance, and then we're going to essence the other one. The reason we want chaos resistance is to avoid the fire, cold, and lightning damage to attacks. We don't want to see them on the prefix because then we can't guarantee high energy shield. But either way, we're going to desecrate, and we're going to desecrate the suffix, and then we'll double homogenize in the prefix, guaranteeing the high energy shield rolls. So we were fairly lucky, got double T1 there. And then the suffix that we would like to reveal is gain arcane surge on crit. Now, out of all the crafting that I've done and desecrating, this is the most evasive modifier that I've tried to get. I think I've had it maybe 4 or 5 times across over 20, 25 gloves. So it seems like less than 20% chance, honestly. And maybe even less than that because I've been using some echoes. But that is the stat we want. If you can't get it, then we'll come over to the tree and we'll just take those 2 points. Instead of going for the effect, we'll go for the chance. That's the only swap we have to do. If you want a pair of gloves like what I actually have equipped here, it's going to be a bit different and a bit more random. So we still want the energy shield, but we're going to want to start with T1 crit damage. You can go for T2, but the essence gives you T2. So this is actually higher than what the essence can give you. So we're going to put a T2 rarity on it because obviously we're going for Magic Fire now with how the game direction. And then we still want to desecrate the suffix because that's where we get the arcane surge from. And then we can double homogenize in the prefix. So whether we use a greater or perfect exalt, it really doesn't matter. Like I'm going to use a perfect one here, but I used a greater one before and still get T1. So it's just to show you, it literally makes no difference. And I always use greater exalts. So it's pretty unlucky. We're going to get the elemental damage here. The weighting for that is very, very low, especially if we use a perfect exalt. That was very unlucky. But it is going to happen. So that's why I recommend doing the first method, the one I showed just before, because this has a chance of going a lot more wrong than the other way. So when that does happen, we just keep in mind these gloves are not for us anymore. So what other stats can we look for? And I recall one of the new keystones that was added lets elemental damage leech instead of physical. So we have a bit of cold and lightning, throw the mana leech on there, rarity crit damage, high energy shield, that could be good. Maybe not a lot, but we can recover the cost of the base and try again. So with the armors, we can start with percentage or flat, just like any of the pieces, glove, helmet, boot, body armor, doesn't matter. We can also start with any resistance we want, because we're not worrying about homogenizing the suffix, so we don't need to worry about ailment. I've decided to put cold resistance on because that's what I would have needed for my build. If you need fire or cold or lightning, you can put whichever one you want on. But either way, once we've done that, we desecrate the suffix, and that's just to lock the suffixes so that only prefixes remain, and then we can double homogenize in. I'm using greater exalts again, like I say, doesn't really matter, but we can still get high rolls with it. That's not in this case. This is a bit unlucky. This is on the worst end of what we'll get. But like we see here, it's a bit better. We do prefer percent flat and then hybrid percent flat. If we see the life on there, it's kind of ruined. So any resistance we get is going to be good. If you need attributes, you can get that. I think there are a few other interesting desecrations we can get, but it's all up to you. We are going to remove one of them anyway, so if you do get bad options, there's a 1 in 3 chance that we'll swap it off for some crit damage reduction. And with some of the map modifiers and how juiced we can make the maps, I think this is really important. So 50% reduced crit damage taken, it might not seem like a lot, but this is the biggest multiplier for enemy damage. So we'll sacrifice a resistance on the armor, and that's going to make us a lot more tanky to random crits, and when we have it on the map as well, it's going to protect us from that. So I'm going to show two different belts, just like we've done with other pieces. The first is going to be a guaranteed triple resistance, and then I'm going to show you how we get a bit of, more of a chance to get a higher life roll as well. So we want charm effect duration or flask mana recovery on the belt prefix with any resistance that you want. We don't have to worry about elemental or chaos on this. So we perfect regal with homogenizing, and that's going to give us at least a level 50 modifier. So we're going to end up with 2 resistances, and to get the third, we're just simply homogenizing Exalt. And this way we've guaranteed that we've kept the mod pool clean with resistance. We've not put life or anything in there. And then the charm effect duration is only there because it has no tags, so that guarantees triple resistance. And then once we don't have a need for it, we can Abyssal Lord or Mark of the Abyssal Lord. And then we desecrate. Now we're hoping to get high life for, I think pretty much every build is going to want high life on the belt. Maybe mana, but we don't really want the mana. If we can get a high life roll, like we do here, it's very nice. Then what this allows us to do is homogenize and exalt the flask life recovery. So we've got a rawhide belt, we already have some as the implicit. Just see what we get on this one. So we do get a life, it's a low roll, but we still get the tag, and that's what's going to give us the flask recovery rate. For the warp build, having at least 1 flask recovery rate on the belt is really good to help us charge the loop, get the engine running. So homogenizing, that's going to guarantee flask life recovery, and that's all there is to it. Slam it again if you want to. This is going to be how the process of how I made the belt that I currently have. So we actually start with a flask life recovery and resistance that we want, and then the greater essence of life is going to add a tier 3 life to the prefix. So tier 3 life, it's quite good. It's actually, I think it's actually the minimum that a perfect exalted can apply. So the essence is equal to a low rolled perfect exalt. But once we have the life and a single resistance, we need to double homogenizing, and that is what might happen. If you saw, we did end up with a life regeneration roll. That is not what we want. What we want is this, with 3 resistances. So if we do get the triple resistance, I'd desecrate that. And we're going to be looking for life regeneration during flask effect. This is going to just help us, like I said before, start the loop, get it running. If we can't get that, because I think there is a small chance we don't get it, then chance to not consume flask is a really good option as well. We do have one more option. If we don't have the 3 stats we want on the suffix, so we've rolled a life regen, we can use an Essence of Insanity to target the suffix, and that will hopefully get rid of the life regen. It didn't in this case, but if it does, you can corrupt it, and that can end up better than a single resistance roll. With the boots, we can choose energy shield, flat or percent, or we can choose movement speed. We don't need movement speed for every build, and there are some, like the warp build that we're playing, that don't need it. It's still nice to have in town, but depends if you want the extra shield or not. Either way, we also start with chaos resistance to avoid the ailment tag. And then all we have to do is add a rarity essence, and then we're going to double homogenize in Exalt. So because we don't have an elemental resistance, we don't have the ailment tag as well. Chaos resistance only has chaos and resistance, so we're guaranteed a resistance as well as an energy shield. Because the recharge suffix is a modifier level 48, we can't get it with a perfect exalt. So if you're doing it this way, you will need to use a perfect exalt to guarantee the double resistance and rarity. Then we desecrate. Ideally, you're probably looking for movement speed if you want it. If not, there is life, which is a great option. If you can't get either of those, then it's probably easier to just get a new base and try the desecrate again. It's probably going to be cheaper based on how the market is now. And then if we are starting with movement speed, it's basically the same thing. We just essence of rarity to put the tier 2 rarity on there. Then we homogenize in to add the resistance from the chaos. And then once we get the resistance, which is going to be a random elemental, we've got lightning there, we can now desecrate the prefix, and we're going to really hope, with our fingers crossed, that we get energy shield. Ideally, we would prefer percentage if you get the choice between percentage and flat, and we want as high a roll as possible. So I did get tier 1 flat here, so I'm not going to risk losing that. You could gamble it if you want, but whatever you get, we're just going to use another homogenizing exalt, and that'll guarantee the last energy shield prefix that we want. So all in all, quite an easy one to do. I'm going to show us here as well just how I made the boots that I actually have, because it is a different method using perfect regal and homogenizing coronation. We're going to go for a homogenizing exalt, and I went for a double there, so I've ended up with double T1 ES, 2 T1 res and a T2 res. Lastly, I desecrated. So this was looking for movement speed, and I was quite stumped when I got to this page because the 25% is almost there, but it's still 10% away. So luckily we did have an Abyssal Omens echo, and we'll try again. The alternative, if you don't get any movement speed, is the Amanimu's Gaze jewel that we put in our boots. That's going to give us more speed based on our spirit, so if you have the Guiding Palm Scepter, that's going to increase your speed as well. You can see there I've got 340 with this particular version of the build. Obviously this was an old version, we can see by the shield it definitely was, but that didn't stop us from getting the look we needed. So 35%. I'll include the helmet just for the sake of integrity, then we've got every item. So definitely still need to see this in action. We can start with any resistance we want because there are no ailment or attack modifiers, so we can't ruin the mod pool. But whichever resistance we start with, we're going to either add another resistance or rarity like I show here. We can choose, depends what you want for the build. I highly recommend rarity though with the current state of the game. Once we have the 2 stats we want, like we just done, we're going to desecrate and then double homogenize in the prefix. And that's going to pretty much guarantee that we have at least a 400 shield, energy shield helmet. And then the suffix, we're just looking for any resistance. If you don't need resistance, then increased effect of Arcane Surge is really nice. That's going to be more cast speed and life regen. So if you're looking to reach a break point, the cast speed could help. Even the critical hit chance is going to be a bit of extra damage for us, but resistance on average I think is going to be a bit more useful to us and to the market. So it does depend though. That's the good thing about crafting. We can tailor make it to what we need. That's going to wrap up the crafting for now. So as we saw, I did try to go over every item slot, show you how I crafted my items. Obviously there are variations, we can do it slightly different ways to get the same outcome. It's all fair game really. There was one item that I didn't show in the showcase because I'd already stitched the footage together, but we basically started with the exact same T1 ES with a T1 Chaos as a blue magic base. We used the Essence of Cold for T3 cold resistance, and then Suffix Desecrate with a double homogenizing Exalt for triple shield. So that was the helmet. This is going to be included in the planner, and alongside the planner I'm going to have a written process for the crafting. So I'll write out all of the omen names and the orbs step by step, so if it was a bit hard to follow the video, you can have it in writing, and that should be helpful as well. I'd like to just speak about a different kind of crafting for now, and that's going to be the maps. So if you're playing this warp build with the Tech Rod Jewel, that's the Tech Rod Jewel, Undying Hate, and the Sacrifice of Blood is what we use. So we regenerate life when we spend it. If we get the map mod that says less recovery rate of life, we basically cannot do that map. So there are there's 3 omens for rerolling maps, but only 2 of them are, I guess, any good. The item rarity, Chaotic Rarity Omen, has a tendency to reroll on maps to less recovery rate of life. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get it on every single map. High rarity, yeah, that's good. But we can't do it because we're also increasing the strength of the modifiers, which means it's not 36%, it's even higher. So this is not good for us. We just don't use these. What we can use instead is the Omen of Chaotic Monsters for extra rare magic. And this has a tendency, we got it on the first go, to give us rare monsters have additional modifiers. So this Omen just seems to pump that stat out. We'll see how many we get. Hopefully we're lucky. No, not lucky this time. But I do have a few that I've been saving up. So these are all rare monsters have an additional modifier. You can also get a Desecration that says natural rare monsters in area have an extra Abyssal modifier. So if you stack that with the rare monsters and put 3 Fears on it, then this is going to be a pretty juicy map. Speaking of the wand, I did also say I would explain why we have a +3 level. So I'm sure there's some of you looking, thinking that it's rubbish, it's no good. Why is it only a +3? Well, I'll tell you now. So the life cost for us, for me at the minute, is 862. My total life is 1773. Now why is this relevant? Because there is a rare monster modifier that prevents our recovery above half, both life and shield. We can also get an Abyss modifier that prevents recovery altogether, and this just makes the health drop to 1. So we can't avoid that, but the rare monster modifier we can. And it's by keeping our life cost low, so that when we get reduced to half life, we have enough life to cast again. And the regen will keep topping us up to half, and we'll be able to keep casting. So this is really important to keep in mind. We do lose damage by not increasing the life cost, but honestly for me, I'm leaning more towards the quality of life side of things, and I have more than enough damage for what I want to get out of the game. I don't really care for tooltip comparisons because you can just easily inflate it. Like I could just take all the energy shield out, find the right balance of crit damage and all the multipliers, and then just go for uncapped demon, and I'll get minus 21 million damage. So I think it's a nice game to play. You can, have some fun with the numbers, but then when you go out into the maps, it's a different game. You're not just recording the best numbers you can. You're actually trying to play, level up, and that's something I've really had a lot of fun with this particular version. I just don't die anymore. Maybe 13,000 shield has something to do with that. But like I said, we are mitigating a lot of physical damage with the Molten Being and the Altered Flesh. So these two together are quite good. And there is also another modifier we can get from an Essence, which I'm not sure which one it is. It is a perfect one. So that's the one. You can slam your armor with this and gain an even more physical damage conversion. So altogether, that would be 40% of physical damage gets reduced by 75%. So here, 30% physical damage reduction just from one skill point, an ascendancy, and an essence. I don't have that essence on my armor because I'm too scared that I'll brick it. But this is something that I'd look to make if I wanted to really min-max the defenses, make sure that I can definitely get to 100. So any changes to the build, that's probably going to be the only thing. Everything else is going to stay exactly the same. The last piece of crafting that I would like to leave you with, you may already know, so that's fine if you do. But for those that don't, you can make level 21 gems, and you don't have to pay divines for them off the trade site. You can pay Ange Exalted Orbs for a load of skill gems, Gem Cutter Prisms, and Val Orbs. And all you're going to do is you're going to select whichever skill you want. I'm just going to select the closest one to my cursor so it's faster. Obviously, pick the skill that you want to play with. You're going to use quality if you want to. Some skills don't need the quality. If I try and think of an example, all of these do. There are some skills where the quality is just like negligible. I mean, ball lightning, that is good for DPS because it moves, so it has they stay in range longer. But so lightning warp, that's the one. Increased magnitude of shock, bloody hell. Increased magnitude of shock. This is not an increase in boss damage, and in the map it's also negligible. So you don't have to quality everything, but just make sure you check it that if you need to, then you do. So I'll just give a couple to all of these because I don't really want to use these anyway. For the purpose of demonstration, we'll start slamming them. So you can see there 3 -1 levels. Just imagine that's a plus, and that's what you're looking for. If you're putting them in the trigger gems, you do not need to socket them. If you want to use it as an actual skill, then you will need to socket it before you Val Orb. If you don't, it'll be stuck like that. So the next thing is obviously so we imagine that's a +1, not a minus. How do we get it to level 21? Well, all you literally do, we're not using the level 20, but level 19 will still increase it. So we saw it was a 14, now it's a 19. If you use a 20, it'll be a 20 with a +1. So that's how we get level 21 gems. They are very cheap, very, very cheap. It's been like that since launch. So I don't think this is a bug. I think this is a feature. Because corruption says most methods cannot be used. So this seems to be like a method that can be used. Now, people like the ones different ways. You might like spell damage, elemental damage. You might like double spell damage, one with mana. And you might not like gain at all because we have Atalui. But the problem with that is most other builds are not using trigger gems. And they're not relying on trigger gems for most of the damage. So Lightning Warp is a mobility tool and a way to ignite, freeze, and shock enemies. The damage for us comes from the triggers. So this is where it matters. We don't have Atalui on these. So the gain as extra stat will not have diminishing returns here. So it's the best in slot option for us. This is the way I think about it. Obviously it is mathematical as well. We don't have any sources of gain as extra, so getting 51% on the wand, obviously that could go up to 60, even more if we sanctify or corrupt it for higher stats. But you can go either way. It's a marginal difference. It's not going to matter that much. But that's my line of thinking on it. That's why I've not kept the spell damage wand, because obviously I have had many variations and tested them, and obviously just by changing the tooltip damage, you can see when you equip and unequip it. There are some bonuses that aren't active when you're in your hideout, so they won't be activated, and these actually reduce the effectiveness of spell damage. So if you understand how the numbers interact with each other, then it's just exactly the same as diminishing returns, with the gain as extra. The more of that stat you have, the less effective it is. So it's the same with additive percent damage. So spell and elemental both fall in that bucket. And yeah, so that's why we have the gain as extra. And also the 2 additional projectiles is really important. I'll just show us. So you can see some of them shoot 3, some of them shoot 5. But the rate that we cast Lightning Warp, we need more than 3. So during the crafting footage, I did show it on a gold amulet. So obviously, I am trying to stack the rarity in the build, and obviously having the crit damage bonus was a nice extra stat to have. But the anointment we have is efficient inscriptions. So because we're only running invocation and ailments, we don't actually need this if we have a solar amulet with the spirit implicit. So I'm going to quickly make one now, show you how I do it. These are currently going for 5 or 6 divine each, just for the magic base, but it's because it's step by step, so easy to get what you want. So you can recombinate it and do it as we did before, but I'm just trying to do this quickly, so we'll use the greater essence of rarity, put that straight on, and then we're going to activate our homogenizing and our greater exaltation. We don't want to specify prefix or suffix because it'll add both of them. It can only add the spell skills and spell damage. We have to use a perfect exalt as well. So there we go. It's only T2 spell damage. It's not the best, but that's what we've got. And then finally, Kurgle, Desecration, is going to give us the Invocated spell that we want. So it is, I'm pretty sure it's guaranteed, but I just like to be on the safe side. So there it is, 14%. We can divine that up. We are going to have to anyway, because we need to get to 60 spirit in total from that amulet. And then the anointment, we're going to put Hail Heart on there. So that's going to be that one, and that's the biggest increase we can get for life. Obviously, trying to save a lot of skill points, so we use it from nothing to get Zealot's Oath. It does save us quite a bit, but then losing Hail Heart is quite a big blow. So getting that back in there is going to be quite helpful, especially when we're starting off, getting the loop going. I've remembered another way we can get the extra spirit is if we sanctify and we get an extra 20%. We can also get +4 to spell levels, and everything can change. So we're going to go for it, see what happens. Oh, that was awful, wasn't it? So that has completely ruined the amulet. If you do that, then it is a gamble. Make sure you've got a backup and don't ruin that one. Also just mention about the energy gain, because we do have a skill called Invocated Echoes, and we also get the Desecration on the amulet. Now this is only for elemental invocation, so if you're using cast on crit, this won't actually apply, but it does definitely apply to the invocation, and it makes it the best metagen to use for us. The elemental ailment, it does trigger fairly often as well, because we do shock, freeze, and ignite all mobs. The bosses, we can't freeze them as quickly, but we definitely apply the shock and ignite very fast. That results in the comet rain. But there's something interesting about the ignite, and it's that the energy we gain is modified by the ignite damage based on the ailment threshold. So the more ignite damage we have, the higher above we can get over the threshold, the more energy we'll generate. And we can get magnitude of flammability and magnitude of ignites, but the flammability magnitude is not what we're after. I mean, there's a lot of text there, feel welcome to read through it, but the short and sweet, it's basically we have to apply flammability first, and then once that reaches 100%, we're guaranteed to ignite every hit, and that's where the fast cast spells are coming from. But we can increase that with Magnitude of Ignite, Magnitude of Ailments. We can get them on duels. It's also good to get cast speed on your duel. That helps you reach the higher cast speeds, which also gives us more projectile speed for movement. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. With the spells as well, obviously the spell you want to use on the boss or the higher damage spell, we want in the Invocation because it's triggering more. And then the Ailment, we just want clearing spells. I put Frost Darts in there. That is very high damage, single target as well, but with the Scion's Temper, it just sprays everywhere, so becomes really effective, especially with Arc, because we do generate lightning infusions. We also generate cold and fire infusions because of elemental equilibrium and the infusing power. We generate additional infusions, and harmonic remnants lets us create even more. So altogether, it's quite synergistic. It's very effective against the bosses. But yeah, that's all we have for now. I'll try and wrap this up. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next time.